here with a YA book review for you. It's been a while since I posted because I haven't really been reading as much as I used to. I did read a couple adult books. I read I think Hardcore 24 by Janet Ivanovich, and I read a Brad Meltzer book called Inner Circle, but I don't really like to review adult on here. I guess it depends on what it is. But I did read, this is my first book that I've read in 2019 and finished, The Vanishing Stair by Maureen Johnson, which is the sequel to Truly Devious, which I have also reviewed on this channel. It's YA mystery, and I really like this one. I gave this one 4 stars. So Truly Devious had ended on a cliffhanger. I had not reread it prior to reading this, which is, she actually does a really good job of like sprinkling in elements from the first book to help refresh your memory. I think I did read like in one of her emails, I think she sent a synopsis of Truly Devious, which it was enough to help me remember exactly what happened. This book reads super fast. I read it in 5 days, but I think I actually read it in like 3 days. But like I started it, you know, when Goodreads you set your start and end date. But I stayed up to midnight, after midnight, last night and the night before reading this, and it ends on a cliffhanger as well, which kind of sucks because I don't think the next one comes out until 2020, which I hope it comes out in 2020 because that's going to suck really bad if it doesn't come out in 2020. So this follows Stevie Bell, who is just kind of like, she's not invisible. She has a little bit, like that's just like her personality. She goes to Ellingham Academy, which is a school that's for geniuses, but she gets in not because she's a genius, but because she's obsessed with the Ellingham case, which involved a kidnapping / murder, and she's trying to solve it. So that's how she gets into the university. But then in Truly Devious, a student dies, and then her parents bring her home, and so this opens with her being at home. There's a big revelation at the end of Truly Devious as to her kind of love interest. It's more or less her love interest, I guess. He's kind of hot and cold. Who his father is, which is this is a spoiler for Truly Devious. So if you haven't read it and plan on it, you may want to skip this a little bit. But his father is a really well-known politician. It's kind of annoying because I'm not a big fan of when YA authors model characters. So like politics in YA, like Grishaverse, right? You have a fantasy world with politics, right? Harry Potter, fantasy world with politics, kind of, you know, World War II vibes in Harry Potter a little, or a lot. And so I'm not really a fan though when I feel like YA authors are putting in their political opinions, subtly, not so subtly, into their book. And you could be like, oh, well, it's the opinion of the character. Well, I'm less inclined to believe that when it's third person and when it's super blatant who the character is modeled after. And there's a couple reasons I don't like that. One is because I feel like if you actually have a YA audience and not an audience who's 30-something years old, you're not allowing your readers to discern their own environment. You're trying to influence them, which I feel like is a little bit manipulative. And the second reason I don't like it is because I didn't ask for your opinion. I don't want to know what politicians you like. I don't care who you voted for. I mean, I do care because if you're really in your face with your political opinions, I'm going to unfollow you, and I will forever be colored in whatever you produce, whether you're an actor, a singer, or an author. You know, it's really a turnoff to me to a certain extent, because just because you have a platform, some people say, you have a platform, you should use it. I actually believe the opposite. Just because you have a platform doesn't mean you need to use it, because let's be real, it's not 1950 anymore. It's 2020 almost, and everyone can have a platform. I have a platform here. It doesn't mean that I have the education or the right or the research and information to back up whatever, you know, I wanted to say on here necessarily in a political way. So just because you have a platform doesn't mean you have to use it. I can think of plenty of celebrities who have opinions and they're dumber than a doornail. Just because you have the opinion doesn't mean you need to share it. So anyway, that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. So that's something that bothered me in this book, but I really like the storyline, and I already knew that since I really enjoyed Truly Devious going in. So I don't know how to explain this without ruining anything. Another death happens, which isn't a complete surprise because it's in the synopsis at the front of the book. So if you read the synopsis, I'm not really spoiling you. A new character is introduced, a professor who wrote a book on the case, who's quite a character, no pun intended, is introduced, and Stevie's kind of rattling with her own demons, I guess, in terms of trying to solve the case, being allowed to go back to school, having to kind of make a deal with someone in order to go back to school, and whether or not that was a good choice. And I mean, she kind of made it sound like she was lying, and I mean, I guess lying by omission is lying, but like, you also need to be ready to tell someone something, and if you're not ready to tell that person whatever you want to tell them, then that says something in and of itself as well. But like I said, it ends on a major cliffhanger. One of the interesting things is that the Ellingham case is more or less solved in this, but what's not solved is what's going on in the present situation, and there's this big mystery as to whether or not Mr. Ellingham had left money to whoever could solve the case, basically whether his daughter, who had been kidnapped, whether she was alive or murdered, if they didn't have a part in her death and they could solve it to give him closure, essentially, I think, then there's a lot of money at stake. But like, Stevie doesn't believe in that conspiracy theory, but then that kind of comes into play again, like, wait, is this real? And if it is real, based on the events that happen in real time in the book, you start to wonder, like, well, wow, who's doing all this stuff? Like, who doesn't want the case solved, or who does want the case solved, and for what reason? Like, if this money is true, like, what are they going to do with it? So it kind of ends with all these things up in the air. There's a character that I like, who I didn't like much. Like, he grew on me in the first book, but I really started to like him more because you understood where he was coming from more in this book. But he's kind of all over the place too, and that didn't end on a good note, so I was like, what? And then there's just like something thrown in at the end, right, that like you get no answers on, that's like a big mystery. So this had me all up in arms. There's actually a part of this book that was really creepy in my opinion. Maybe I was just feeling really sensitive that day. It's hard to say. But I really like this series. If you like YA mystery, if you like the Brittany Cavallaro's Sherlock Holmes series, which I just found out that there's a story by Sherlock Holmes, because Sherlock Holmes plays a little bit in here as well, called A Study in Scarlet. And I didn't realize that story, I mean, maybe I did long ago, I was an English major, existed. And the Sherlock Holmes first book is called A Study in Charlotte. And it never crossed my mind, that little play on words there. But if you like that series, then you'll probably enjoy the Truly Devious series, and vice versa. I'm really a big fan of YA mystery. It's really a genre that has grown on me and that I really enjoy. And it just, like I said, this book, it's not super long, but it reads so fast. Actually, I don't even know if it's only going to be 3 books. I'm just assuming that it's only going to be 3 books. So The Vanishing Stair is the sequel to Truly Devious. Like I said, you can find the review for that on this channel. If I remember, I'll make it the video at the end of this one. And I gave it 4 stars, and if you enjoy YA mystery and you want a quick read, then I think you'll like this one. In the meanwhile, happy reading and happy reading.